Om Shanti. How are you, my dear brothers and sisters? So, today we are going to see a very important topic that proves the myth preached by Islamic scholars all over the world. And because of this myth, innumerable number of wars have happened. So, temples of other religions have been demolished due to this single myth from Quran. They have just misinterpreted the actual meaning of this particular verse, which comes in the fourth chapter, Anisa, which means women. So in that 48th verse says, God does not forgive association with him, but he forgives anything less than that to whomever he wills. Whoever associates anything with God has devised a monstrous sin. So people think, usually Islamic scholars says, um, believing in somebody other than Allah or worshipping somebody other than Allah in any shape or form is more sinful than committing uh, a murder. So that could be the reason for many wars and demolition of temples of various religions. But that is a myth, because unless you know the knowledge directly from Allah, which here even in Quran it is mentioned, only Allah has his knowledge, not anybody. It means whatever you have listened so far through any religion, they were not Allah's words. They were just the words of religious founders exclusively to establish the religion. But Allah means God. That's not his name. At least the Christians have the name Jesus Christ is our God. Well, he is not God. At least they have a name to their God. But in Islam, they don't even know the name of the God. In Hinduism, there are many gods. Among that, God Shiva is indeed that one God who is called Allah or Heavenly Godfather by Christians and Muslims. So only he has this knowledge, which only he can reveal only when he comes. But none of the religious scriptures reveals anything about the coming of God himself. They just think Jesus comes, Krishna comes. Well, they were born out of a mother's womb, they can never be called God. And God comes in the end because only he has the knowledge not to establish any religion, but to send you to heaven. This is a 5,000 year time cycle revealed by God, the first half of which was heaven. This same world we live in was heaven in the beginning. God created this earth as heaven. We changed it into hell by taking 84 rebirths. 100 years before the destruction of this world, God comes from his supreme abode. Not only God, we souls, before entering this body, were living along with God in this supreme abode. This is called Parandam or Parlog in Hindi. So this God is called Allah by Muslims, Shiv by Hindus, and Heavenly Godfather by Christians. So God enters an old man's body. He doesn't take birth like us. That's the reason nobody can see God. Actually, nobody can see us as well. Only they can see the body the soul have. It's like the dress for the soul. Just like we are not this dress, we are not this body either. The soul shines like a tiny star in between the eyebrows, which is why Hindus apply tilak here without even knowing that. So it is the soul that sees through the eyes, listens through the ear, speaks through the mouth, performs every single act using this body. As a matter of fact, while in heaven, everybody were soul conscious. They know that they are the soul. They interact with each other with soul consciousness in their mind. So when they become body conscious, they can no longer get pleasure from within. Because in heaven, they were constantly happy from within because the soul itself is an embodiment of peace and happiness. So now they can't get happiness from within, so they depend on everything and everybody around them to get happiness, and they are obviously short lived. And uh, that's how they become addicted to sensual pleasures and five vices: lust, anger, greed, attachment, and ego. So, under the influence of these five vices, they start committing sin after sin. When it accumulates to a certain level, they get punished for the same in the form of diseases, conflict between family members, natural calamities, war between nations, and so on. So, it is when the sin reaches its peak, as it is now, the world is getting destroyed. So, just before the destruction of this world, 100 years before the destruction of this world, God Himself enters an old man's body and gives this teaching. He names that old man as Brahma, and whoever listens to the teachings of God directly from God through Brahma's mouth, they are called Brahma Kumars and Kumaris, which means sons and daughters of Brahma. So this Brahma is called Adam in Bible and Quran. Doesn't mean nobody existed before them. This is a continuous cycle which has no beginning or end. So what happens is when we become fully body conscious, body is made up of five elements. So that's why it is compared to the clay. So that's why in Bible and Quran it is mentioned that God raised Adam from the earth. That is from body consciousness, bringing us back to soul consciousness. Because we were soul conscious originally in the beginning. It is when we lose soul conscious we start committing sins. While we were soul conscious, we were filled with the richness of heaven in terms of prosperity, peacefulness, blissfulness, health, everything. Everything we see, listen, everything gives us nothing but happiness. That's the kind of world God created. Even lion and lamb take water from the same pond together. Even animals, wild animals like lion and tiger, they don't hurt any animal. Every animal and humans live lovingly with each other. So that's the kind of world God created, and we have changed it into what it is now. Now God says it is because you are addicted to sensual pleasures, you start feeding on other animals. So now you have to stop it because you are going to go to heavens. You have to develop the qualities that you originally possessed in heaven. Only then you will be able to enter heaven. And also in heaven, there won't be any traces of vices like lust, anger, greed, attachment, and ego. So you have to give up lust. Even in heaven, marriages will happen, childbirth will happen, but physical relationship won't be there. So children won't be born out of sex, but when husband and wife have this thought of having a baby, the wife gets pregnant. That's the power of the pure soul. So now God says, give up lust, anger, greed, attachment, and ego. Especially attachment. Well, lust is the greatest enemy, which is very difficult to conquer, but you can conquer under the guidance of just one God. No religious scripture is going to help you conquer lust. So God says, it is by being in remembrance of me, who has never taken birth as humans through mother's womb. So he never get addicted to these five vices. So by remembering the ever pure God, that we also become pure. After all, we are the children of God. If he was pure, we were also pure. But it is when we become body conscious, we become impure. So by getting rid of this body consciousness, by considering ourselves constantly that we are souls, and by remembering that we are the sons or daughters of the Supreme Soul God, we will slowly develop soul conscious. Thereby we become pure. So our mind gets corrupted with these vices, vicious thoughts, waste thoughts, and negative thoughts. To overcome that, we have to be in remembrance of God and also in remembrance of the teachings of God, which happens through the mouth of Brahma. We will get the knowledge absolutely free of cost from all Brahma Kumaris Rajog meditation centers. We can also access the same in any language in several websites and YouTube channels. You just have to search it, Brahma Kumaris Murli, in whatever language you want to read. So, the essence of God's knowledge is very simple. Consider yourself to be the soul and remember God as a point of light as much as possible. So, only God knows about Him. If any religious scriptures has any connection with God, then it should have revealed how God looks like, where He is, what His duty is, why should actually remember Him, why should we be good anyway. Because people don't find any answer for this in any religious scriptures has no power over any human. So they all get corrupted. That's Kali Yuga. That's why it is going to get destroyed. Now God says, you have to remember me constantly to the extent that you shouldn't remember anybody, including your own body. You just have to consider yourself to be a point of light. Instead of considering yourself to be a soul that is within the body, you just consider yourself to be the soul without the body. And also see each other as soul. Of course, it takes effort and time. When you are able to achieve success in seeing each other as soul very normally and casually, that's when the world destruction will happen. So, be it the Third World War or the natural calamities, anyway, the world will definitely have to end. Know why? Because the same world is going to be converted into heaven. Just think for yourself. Uh, Bible and Quran teaches that there is no rebirth, right? So if there is no rebirth, if somebody goes to heaven or hell based on what he did in this one birth, then why should he wait till the end? He could straight away go to heaven or hell if it is there somewhere else. It is because the world gets converted to heaven only in the end. They say they will have to wait. But unfortunately, nobody will be sleeping in the dead body. It is only when the soul separates from the body, it is called death. So, soul, soon after leaving this body, takes another body, which is also within few verses you will find that we will be discussing that as well. So now we have to consider ourselves to be the soul and remember God as a point of light as much as possible, because this is our final birth. So it is what's happening now that is revealed in Bible, Quran, Mahabharata, Gita, whatever religious scriptures you take. It is just a part of what God teaches now. God is the ocean of knowledge. He gives nothing but knowledge. But what you find in religious scriptures is God's knowledge corrupted with human dictate. God's knowledge will be just 1% or even lesser than that. Everything else is human dictates. You can easily find that out. When God asks somebody to kill anybody for any reason, you can easily find that it could not be God's way, right? Okay. Now, God says, you have to remember me and forget everything, everybody, including your own body. If you don't have a body, then how could you have a bodily relation like father, mother, brother, sister, children, spouse? So, of course, you have that physical relations, you have to take care of them, but without any attachment. So you have to consider God to be your father, mother, husband, wife, brother, sister, children, grandchildren, whatever relationships you want to have with just one God, because only He is imperishable, everybody is perishable. If you have attachment to the perishable human being, you are going to suffer in the end when they get killed right in front of you. Then you will have attachment towards the language you speak, towards the caste you belong to, towards the religion you belong to, towards the community you belong to. That's the reason for all wars. But if you just consider yourself to be the soul that is sinful now, and your father is ever pure, you will just spend your time fruitfully by being in remembrance of God and purifying yourself, because it is you who have committed sin. So it is you who have to purify yourself. How to get rid of those thoughts? Because no religion teaches you that sex is sin. They just say prostitution is sin. But it is by having sex with your husband or wife that you become addicted to sex, that you go after extramarital affairs, prostitution, and indulge in rape. And you will eventually be punished. So you have to remove the seed of that sin, which is sex, which is actually body consciousness. It is by considering yourself to be the body and seeing each other as body that you develop sexual attraction. That's the reason God says, see each other as soul and consider them to be your brother. After all, they are the children of God, and all souls are brothers. That is sons, not even daughters. Only body is male or female, that you can call it man or women. But soul, it can take a male body in one birth and the female body in the next birth. So it alternates. But the reason God says all souls as males is because in olden days, it is only male child that inherits the father's property. So now we are inheriting the property of God, which is heaven. That's why we are called sons. That's why He is the Father. He is not the Father for this body, because even that is being misrepresented by Islamic scholars. We can't consider God as Father because He doesn't give birth to anybody. Well, He doesn't give birth to a body, but we are His children forever, right from the time when we were in heaven. Even when we were in supreme abode, we were the children of God. But only now God Himself comes to give His introduction and His teaching. So now He plays the role of both father and teacher. He gives the knowledge that's required to enter heaven, which is to convert body conscious human being into soul conscious divine being. So for that you have to remember only God, nobody else. This is the actual meaning of what is represented in Quran as God does not forgive association with Him. Well, this is not something about God, because what is there to forgive? God is not wicked. He is all loving, ever loving, all forgiving. But you have to forgive yourself, because it is by becoming body conscious that you have committed all the sins. So God's way of forgiving us is by giving these divine teachings. So now we have to remember only God and nobody else. That's the reason even in Bible it is mentioned, if anybody has more love towards their father, mother, sister, brother, children, property, fame, or their own body, than they have love for God, then they can never enter heaven. Actually, you shouldn't have love for anybody at all. It's just a love on the surface, so detached, like it's like a relationship between the doctor and the patient. Well, it is his love that he cures the disease, but he is not going to cry if the patient dies. Such should be the detachment you have towards your family members and everybody. Only then, because everybody is a sinner, obviously they will be punished. If they have sinned, if they are punished, that's just. But why should you be punished for their punishment? Because of the attachment. That's why God asks you to detach yourself, because the souls are eternal. They are here all the time, even before they take birth to you as your own child. It was somebody else's child in the previous birth, it's going to be somebody else's child in the next birth. It's like a passenger in the train. You spend time with them happily for a short time, knowing that they will leave when their station arrives. Just like that, nobody knows when soul will leave this body and takes the next. If you are smart, you should always be interacting with each other with this in your mind. Then you will be detached. That's the essence of Srimad Bhagavad Gita as well. But the only difference is, just like in Bible it is mentioned Jesus Christ as God, in Bhagavad Gita they have mentioned Sri Krishna as God. No, God can never be anyone who has taken birth. And another thing is, God, in Quran they have mentioned Quran to be God's word. No, God himself will come to give his teaching. Be it Quran or Bible or Srimad Bhagavad Gita, they were all human dictates. Of course, God's knowledge is there, here and there. That's it. So, the actual meaning of associating with God doesn't mean worshipping somebody like God. See, if you are, people are fighting in the name of religion, right? Why do they fight? Because they consider their religion more than their God. That's the reason. Like that, if something is happening to somebody, to your family member by other, then you go fight with them. Why? Because you are loving them more than God. So that's the actual meaning of this. You should have no love for anybody, no bodily love. You should have spiritual love. That's the reason you are giving this knowledge. Otherwise you can't do, you can't, there is no guarantee. Ukrainians were left homeless just in a day. They couldn't imagine that. Same is the case with Palestinians. Who can save them? Only God can protect. Only if you are following the teachings of God. God's way is love, not fighting with. If any religious scripture says to take sword and fight, you can be doubly sure it's the human dictate, not God's way. Because if we have to fight for our own cause, then what's the need for God? Even atheists will do the same. So God says, the reason God says to detach yourself from everybody is because only then you will have no anger. Only then you will have no lust. Only then you will have no attachment or ego. You're just a point of light without a body. When you have nobody, what is there to feel egoistic about? You will be very humble, right? So you have to be soul conscious all the time. You have to see each other as soul, not as someone as Muslim or Hindu or Christian, because just by seeing him belonging to another religion, you will have that um, enmity, at least in a subtle form. So it may develop anytime soon. So always consider each other as soul, your brother, son of your father. That is the soul conscious love. You want them to come to heaven. So you are giving this knowledge. Obviously, they are not going to take it. Very rare. 1 in million will take this knowledge. That's the reason in Quran it is mentioned only 1 in million will enter heaven. So it's not associating somebody with God is a sin, but it's not about association. When you have attachment with anybody, that is a sin for which you will be punished. God is not punishing you. Law of karma is punishing you. You got to understand that, because if you say God is punishing you, that is a big insult to God. How can God be both loving and be like a rowdy? People think, oh, he has a double face. No, he doesn't. In Quran it is mentioned, I am not human to change my teaching daily. Because in Quran, Muslims believe that all prophets are the messengers of God, but they contradict with each other and they justify themselves that God sends one messenger at one point of time for that period, and another messenger for another period. That's the reason you find the difference. No, God comes only once. His He comes every 5,000 years once, give the same teaching. And those who takes teachings from God, only they will be the ones who will be attracted towards this knowledge and take this knowledge and enter heaven. The rest, what's their fate? Of course, everybody will have to leave the body and go to Supreme Abode. But if you are in remembrance of God, you will be leaving this body very happily, because you are constantly in remembrance of the Supreme Abode and heaven. Already you will be living there already at a mental level, that you don't find any difference that you are in the body or outside the body. But the rest who don't practice this, they are going to have a really bad time leaving this body, seeing their loved ones leaving their body, especially out of rape or any cruel murder. That's going to increase their pain. So God doesn't want you to suffer. That's the reason He is teaching you this. When you are constantly aware this world destruction is for opening the gates of heaven, you will be more happy, while the rest of the world will be so much worried about the destruction of the world. It is bound to happen. That's the reason God has come, to give this knowledge, to give you courage that you are not the perishable body to worry about it. You are the imperishable soul. All you need to worry about is to destroy the sins that is within the soul. You have to purify it by being in remembrance of God. This is the single and simple teaching by God. You have to remember Him as a point of light, lovingly. He is not some non-living thing. You have to have love. How will you have love unless you interact with somebody? So that's why God is speaking with us daily through Brahma. You will find that knowledge called Murli in all Brahma Kumaris Rajyog Meditation Center. We'll be giving the links of some of them in the description below, and you can also Google it yourself for Brahma Kumaris Murlis in any language. So here it is mentioned, God will forgive anything other than associating something or somebody with God. So it is not about God, it is about us. If we are constantly, if you are filling our mind and intellect with just God and nothing else, then we are forgiving ourselves, because we are saved from our past sins. We have committed sins, there's no doubt, for the past 2500 years under the influence of these five vices. Now you have to remove those vices and fill yourself with the divine qualities which you receive by reading the Murli daily. You can never find such things in any religious scriptures. You can see it yourself, test for yourself. So, associating anything with God is not a monstrous sin. We have already committed monstrous sins. So, having love for anybody or anything other than God is like digging your own grave. So, that's the reason you need to remember only one God. God is just one. You have to remember Him. But nobody knows. Muslims say, pray nobody other than Allah. But what is praying? It's begging. In all religions, give me money, give me child, give me wealth. That's begging. That's devotion. So in hell, we've been performing devotion. In hell, we would never perform devotion. There won't be any temple or church or mosque there. So everything will be demolished before the establishment of heaven. So maybe people of other religions will be instruments in doing that, or natural calamities will be instruments of doing that, or nuclear bombs will be instruments of doing that. Just don't worry. God is not there in those buildings. God is ever living. Just remember Him. Go there in your mind and consider Him to be a star shining in the golden red colored sky. That's how the world looks like where God lives. And you can do anything. Just be sure your mind is connected with God constantly. Just like if a boy and girl falls in love with each other, no matter what they do, they will be remembering each other, right? They'll be speaking with their parents, but still their mind will be constantly engaged with their loved one. So similarly, your mind should be obsessed with God's love. It should harass you. Only then your sins that you have been accumulating for the past 2500 years will be absolved. It's not a simple thing, right? So no matter what happens, just make sure your mind is just connected with God. So that's the thing, this the actual spiritual meaning of 48 verses. But if you love only the meaning that's superficial, that anybody can understand, congratulations. But if you want to know, no, God can never be like this, then think what God has Himself said. That's what God says. Consider what I said, compare it with what you have known already from your religious scriptures. Then decide for yourself which is right. This is such an amazing verse that confuses all Muslims. So the 49th verse goes, have you not considered those who claim purity for themselves? Rather, God purifies whom He wills, and they will not be wronged a bit. So they think their religious founders are their purifier. They think Jesus purifies them, and way given by Muhammad purifies them. The way given by Sri Krishna purifies them. But only God can purify. So does he show partiality? Because it is here mentioned that whoever he wills, he will purify. It's not like that. God wants everybody to be purified. He gives this knowledge to everybody. But it is us who refuses to take that knowledge. So you can't blame God. Because Bible and Quran, they are actually blaming God, insulting God by saying that God is actually showing partiality. God can do whatever He wants. He is not like that. If He is like that, then how could He say you will not be wronged a whit? You will. there won't be injustice for what you do. So it is by remembering God you become purified. That is, you no longer get attached to anybody. That's the pure soul. Even when in heaven, it is will be surrounded with the most beautiful men and women, but still will not be attracted to them. The happiness comes from within, not by seeing each other lustfully. We'll be living in palaces made of golden bricks, but still we will not be jealous of each other's wealth, because obviously not everybody is going to be same. There will be servants and servants for the servants, and rich people, richest. Of course, the richest of all is the emperor and empress of the world, who are Sri Lakshmi and Sri Narayan. That's the reason in Hinduism, in Narayan temple, they have the celebration of called opening ceremony of the gates of heaven. You can find it nowhere in the world in any religion. That proves India was indeed heaven in the beginning. Those who lived in heaven were worshipped till date as deities because of their purity. So they were the best creation by God. So now we have been worshipping them so far, which is not bad because they were pure and they are worth it. They were worthy of worship. But where have they all gone? After taking several rebirths, they have lost everything. So now, after receiving the knowledge from God, you don't have to waste your time worshipping them, because it's time for you to become like them, because you were them in the beginning. You are not God, you are the deities. Because in Hinduism, they have this false opinion that we ourselves were part of God. No. We take the divine teachings of God and become as pure as God by remembering Him, but nonetheless, we can't be pure all the time. In the beginning, we will be 100% pure, then our purity slowly decreases. Whereas God is ever pure, ever loving. So He is filled with divine qualities all the time, which is why He is called Sadashiv in Hindi, which means He is always Shiv. Krishna cannot be Krishna all the time. In the first birth, the name given to his body was Krishna by his parents. In the next birth, he will be named somebody. He will be a girl, he will be a guy. So taking births alternately. Only God Shiva is always knowledgeful. He comes only in the end and gives this knowledge. So if you think somebody else is pure, you are wrong. No matter who he is, everybody is a sinner. After all, they take birth out of sex. In heaven, nobody was born out of sex. That's why we worship them. So, God purifies everybody based on how they want to be purified. If you want to purify yourself by remembering in God, well, it's the journey of becoming pure is going to be pleasant. But if you pay no attention to what God says, you will still be purified, but in a hard way, by giving you the punishment that you can never imagine. We are seeing such punishments in uh, areas where war is happening, right? Do you want to become pure just like that? It's in your hand. So whatever they do now, by being in remembrance of God and also giving the teachings of how to become pure to others, you will be given the reward in heaven. If you are following every single teaching of God, which is called Srimad, then you will be claiming the highest status in heaven, which is Lakshmi Narayan status. So it's up to you. You can become whatever you want. If you are so careful, you can become. If you are careless, then you will be losing it. You will be getting the lower status in heaven. That too only when you listen to this knowledge with faith. Even though you don't make effort, but still you believe that this is God's knowledge, you will surely come to heaven, but not in the beginning, only in the end. Only when you make effort that you will have the longer lifespan in heaven, which means you will take birth right from the beginning. Only then you will be able to enjoy the richness of heaven for the first 2500 years. Even in hell, the half of hell is going to be pleasant, but we'll be making mistakes for which we won't be punished then. Only after that we will be punished. So the 3/4 of this kalpa time cycle called 5000 year time cycle called kalpa, we will be experiencing only happiness. For those who listen to God's knowledge, for those who pay no attention to this knowledge, they will come when their religious founders come. Only after that they will descend from the supreme abode. Till then they will be there. It's like the coma stage of the soul. So even then, for example, Christianity, they have approximately 2000 years lifespan. Not everybody is going to have 2000-year lifespan. Very few will take birth soon after Christ comes. Then slowly they will descend. So if we take somebody, for example, we can take the Christ soul. Christ is the pure soul that enters Jesus. Jesus is a man. Christ is the soul that comes directly from God. Doesn't mean it takes knowledge from God, because God has no mouth to speak there, and we souls had no ears to listen there. So whatever God gives, He comes here and gives. God doesn't send anybody. It is only now God gives this knowledge, and those who take this knowledge and spread this message to everybody, we are the true messengers of God. God sends many messengers at the same time to all corners of the world. But unfortunately, Christians and Muslims believe at different times God sends different messengers, which is wrong. Because if you are getting the God's knowledge, then you will be in heaven. This world would have converted to heaven. Just think what world has become 2000 years after Jesus Christ. Even at the time of Jesus Christ, it hasn't changed a bit. That's why He is crucified. So if you think about it, you can understand the difference between what God says and what you have been listening so far. So whatever you read from your religious scriptures, they are all lies against God. Saying God asked you to kill him, give him this punishment. God can never be like that. It's an insult to God. It's a lie against God. That's enough for him to be punished. Because that's in Hinduism in India, there are many who claim themselves to be God, which is the biggest sin of all. They will be punished intensely at the end of this birth or in another birth, but they are sure to be punished. So whether or not you are going to hold the hand of God or hold the hand of humans, whether you are going to follow the teachings of God or the teachings of the religious founders, it is up to you. So we will be seeing soon in the next video. Om Shanti. Thanks for watching. Dear brothers and sisters, please think about what God says and spread this message to your friends and families, so that even if you don't understand, at least they can understand. Who knows? And this charity will be added in your account. You will be blessed for that. Thanks for watching. Om Shanti.